Welcome everybody. How many of you have been to another Connect 17 event this week? Okay, awesome. How many of this is your first one of the week? Awesome also. And a little informal survey, how many of you heard about this through Eventbrite? Because I know we had a bunch of RSVPs from Eventbrite. Okay, great. So welcome. This is going to be a really good panel all about design as an asset for your business. And I love the subtitle of how design and money intersect. So we're going to talk about the impact of design, both good and bad, upsides, downsides on your business. So before we get started, I wanted to take a quick second and first off, thank WeWork for this space and for having us here. My company, Products to Profits, has a space upstairs on the 3rd floor. But I wanted you to know a little bit about the space. So this is Craig. He's one of the community team here.
Thank you guys. Thanks for coming to the Connect Week event. Thanks for coming to our space. If you've never been to it, we like to say that we're the platform for creators. We give you the space where you can make not just a living, but a life as well. So by extension of that, we build community. We're doing that globally in 53 cities around the world in 250 locations. If you take space here, you actually have access to having conference rooms in any one of those other locations, as well as accessing our member network to connect with other members around the world. Right now, there's an initiative I'd love to talk about that's very relevant to Connect Week called the Creator Awards. WeWork's had a lot of success, so we're giving back. $20 million in 2017 is what we're granting out. Now it's open to members and non-members. Just Google Creator Awards WeWork and apply. There's still time for both Mexico City and New York. You could be incubating an idea or looking to scale up your company. Profit, not-for-profit, check it out. And we're granting to people that are just building products that are changing the world for the better. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so that's Creator Awards. If you are here and you have a business, a nonprofit, you're an artist, and you would like some funding as a grant that converts to stock, that's the way they're doing it. They're using the Y Combinator paperwork. I highly encourage you to go take a look at it. We've been encouraging our clients to do it. So, with that, we have a really extraordinary panel with us tonight. And I want to just take a second. First off, thank you all for coming. This was a really joyful experience putting it together, mostly because the quality of you as individuals and your ability to jump in and say yeah and want to support entrepreneurs. And so I just love you for that from the bottom of my heart. So we have a range of design backgrounds and of experiences here, and if any of you saw the emails, you know a little bit about these individuals, but you may not know the full depth and breadth. So we have people from brand management, product sales, business strategy. Shawna's got deep background in media and digital agency. She runs LA Food Fest. We've got Augustine. He and Chuck are partners in Bayfish. Augustine has worked on multiple ginormous brands like Peter Pan Peanut Butter, Nature Made Vitamins, Orville Redenbacher, and the list goes on. He's also guest lectures. I think it was UCLA, right? Okay. And then we have Mario Munch. He's from iRobot. He's their Senior VP of Technology, and they're right upstairs on the 4th floor. So we're really fortunate to have him. He's got great background in robotics, learning for machine learning, etc. And so he's actually brought some products you can take a look at. I've been a fan of Roomba for a long time. I've had one since I think it was original. So he's got great background on the manufacturing side of how does design impact manufacturing and how to think about design iterations in physical products. And then we have Kristin. Kristin is here representing intellectual property for one side. She's a patent attorney, but she's also a member of Pasadena Angels. And so if you are interested in working with angels and you want to know how they look at design and some of the impacts, which is going to be great for that. And then we have Chuck. Chuck is one of my favorite people involved with Connect 17. You go to any event, you find Chuck. Because he's been at everything. He's doing a lot of the filming. Chuck has background I didn't even know about. He's worked with Mercedes-Benz, other major national brands. He's also won design art direction awards for marketing campaigns with the movie Lemony Snicket. So deep background there. And I've worked on product lines that have done up to $300 million in sales in 3 years on QVC. We've done company turnaround. Instead of a company going $1 million to zero, they've gone $1 million to $2 million. And a lot of that has been design driven for how you produce in actual sales and get business valuation. Okay? So with that, I'm going to ask Augustine to take a minute and give us a little bit of context about where design fits as an asset in a business.
Wow, pressure. Well, I own a creative agency, so I'm in the business of selling design as a service. And a couple years ago, Chuck and I and another gentleman named Soren Peterson, you may have known through Friday Morning Coffee, we started a company called Applied Design Science, where we took his algorithm that he developed at Stanford and tried to quantify design and the value design brings to the company. So I've been thinking about this for a couple years now, and in many conversations with clients, you know, they always ask me, well, is it worth it? And so I always say, well, yes, it's an asset. As a matter of fact, you could link your intangible assets directly to your balance sheet. It's called goodwill. Now, I'm going to use big companies here just to drive the example, but if anyone were to try to buy Coca-Cola right now, it would be almost too expensive. But there's two different values. There's the book value for the hard assets, and there's the intangible value. The intangible value is what the brand is worth. The brand name is worldwide. So that falls into the goodwill portion of the balance sheet. For smaller companies, if you were to get bought out, you would get evaluated either 2 or 3 times EBITDA or sales if you're lucky. But you always want to push that 4 times, that 4x, or maybe 5x. And really, that additional valuation is hopefully having a good product, but also having an identity and branding that backs that up. Now, I say I'm in the business of creating digital assets, and it's important to think of it that way. It costs money, but yet you need to look at it as an investment. And another example I use on a regular basis is, how many people remember the Memorex commercial where the guy's sitting back in his chair and he's looking at, right? So in the business, it's called legs. That ad has legs. How old is that?
I have that poster. I was probably 16. I'm 53.
Yeah.
When I got that poster, yeah.
It's been around for a long time. If you saw it, you would know that you've seen it before. That's a digital asset. Well, you know, it's a creative asset. And in the digital world, you know, we digitize that and put it online, which becomes a digital asset. But basically, everything that you do within your company should be created as an asset. And if you look at design as an asset, you'll have a different thought process, and you'll actually use it a little bit more. As a matter of fact, earlier today I was on a call with a client, and I say, hey, look, you have to look at, we're talking about websites, you have to look at your website as a piece of machinery that's sitting next to you in your office. If your coffee machine goes down, what are you going to do? Well, you can't do much. But if your website goes down, you know, what are you going to do? So if you just have the idea in your mind that you are working on assets for your company, then you'll deploy them a little bit better. The last thing I want to say is really, there's another term that can be used. It's called brand identity. And brand identity is really the sum of all the little things that you do to make that identity. It could be color. How many know about construction and home improvement? You go to Home Depot, you go down the tool aisle, and they say the color yellow. What brand do you think? Right?
Yeah.
So that's my point, is that within itself is just a color. But when it's attached to all the other assets that you do, it becomes an asset. So that's where it all came about.
Awesome. Well, here, we're going to turn it over to Shawna. She's got a bunch of questions. Shawna's going to be our lovely moderator today.
Hi, everybody. So I'm actually going to start with a little quickie on one of the projects that we do that really dovetails with the conversation today, because I think it's a good jumping off point for a starter question. So one of our projects is Artisanal LA. That's what's up behind me. And we've been functioning as a sort of incubator for small brands, particularly home goods, edibles, etc., for the last 8 years in the city. So So as you can imagine, what we come across are a lot of new brands, fledgling brands, people starting out of their home, their garage, their workshops, their home kitchens. And it's always fascinating to see, frankly, how a product that we know empirically may be an inferior product will excel leaps and bounds beyond someone else's product that is far better, be it a home good, a food product, etc., on the pure merit of design and a beautiful brand. Because we see this time and time again, and we talk about it a lot. As all of us as consumers, when we engage and come across a great brand, it looks first, right? That's where we go immediately. You're not having a relationship with an established brand like this. So the question I want to pose to the panel is where you believe that great design or not so great design makes or breaks your business. See who, if you want to kick it off?
Sure, we go down. Where it makes or breaks business. I think if I got the question correctly, where it starts in terms of the process. Okay. So I think it starts with management. You know, a lot of CEOs and business managers don't necessarily come from the design world. So they're numbers people, they're sales people. They just want things to get done. And when they start thinking about design, it's really after the fact. It's after the product starts to slow down. And when they're past that point of they're making 20 times growth a year, and they're down to 3, 4, 5, and they're getting pressure from the investors to really turn that to 2 or 3 times growth. And they start looking at things, and that's in their mind. They say, oh, well, let's just make this better. So that's actually the wrong time to do it. And I think a lot of people would agree with design thinking coming about in the last 5 years to 8 years, is that it should be up front. Typically, it will come when you have a product. You know, design is involved, but a lot of services, it's after the fact, and you have to start early. Now, one last thing before I don't want to hog it. You have to, and sometimes you get in a situation where the company is so old that their branding is at a point where anything they do could actually hurt them. But sometimes you have to feel the pain to get to the next level.
Hello. I come from the engineering point of view. I'm a scientist. So design for me was an afterthought, he mentioned. Until we had to, I used to work for a small company here in Pasadena called Evolution Robotics, and we needed to do our own first product. And we had a design for something that we cook up in the lab, and for us it looked beautiful. Of course, we could not sell it to anybody. So once we start engaging with design firms, you could see the response on consumers. And it's, I think that there is I don't know if it is 50-50, but there is a big importance on how you present the product that you're trying to sell and what are the features that the product has, so that people will actually be interested in purchasing. Consumers are very influenced by how interesting, how nice, how the features are conveyed by the design. You know, one of the iconic companies that you can all think about is Apple. Maybe they don't have the best phone, but they have the best design, the best message, and everybody wants to buy Apple. My daughters won't buy Apple, even though I told them that they are not the best phone. So design has a huge impact, but I think that it needs to be supported by good engineering too. So it's a good marriage between the two will give you a great product.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Kristin Hiibner. I'm an IP attorney from Karish and Bjorgum. We're local here in Pasadena, and I'm also an investor with Pasadena Angels. So I'm wearing 2 hats this afternoon. So I'll start off first with my IP attorney hat and how design can make or break a company. The intersection between design and intellectual property is obviously huge. The real when you want to design a product, start a company, design is critical. Good design is critical. And first of all, you have to be able to protect that design, and that will add to investor interest. And it will add to valuation. And second of all, what will kill your company is if you do not have a right to use that design or whatever intellectual property. That's the fastest way to kill a company. Become involved in an infringement suit. Goodbye, forget about it, you're done. So, you know, in that respect, when you start any company that's starting, you know, that has any sort of design or intellectual property, you should consult with an intellectual property attorney early on to make sure that, you know, that first and foremost, they have a right to use any intellectual property. And as an added bonus, if it's protectable, again, that will go to valuation and investor interest. So now speaking from an angel perspective, how does design factor into that? Well, angel investors, believe it or not, are just consumers. And when they, you know, and in Casting Angels, when we see companies, they're very early stage. But it would be rare at sort of this junction in angel investing that angels would be interested in a company without revenue, just an idea stage. So to get any sort of interest, you're going to need to have a fully formed product and probably revenue. So as angels are just basically consumers, they want to invest in a product that they would buy. So design is incredibly important. And, you know, it's the functionality, and it's also, you know, just excite them. You know, if the angels, you know, there may be 25 companies, there may be 80 companies coming through Pasadena Angels in any given month. You know, how do you rise above the fray? You know, and design is one way of doing that. And then the second way is, it goes to valuation. And it's not only when you go to look for money, hopefully you're out there looking for a lot of different sources, okay? And the more interest you can get, the more investors you have, the higher valuation. And so that is really just, it's one of the most fundamental things. The better design, the more interest, the better valuation you're going to get.
Hello. Thank you. So, what makes good design? What makes bad design?
And how it makes or breaks the business.
And how it makes and breaks your business. Well, I can only tell you from a design standpoint that, by the way, I'm Chuck, and I'm co-creative director over at Bakefish. We work on a lot of different brands and seen a lot of startups launch and help a lot of enterprises stay enterprising. So, but I guess the dilemma is whether or not the product or the design is actually feasible in the market is what I'm hearing, right? So how do we solve that? We solve it by understanding, are we creating context in the marketplace or in technology, I believe. And how many here are designers? First of all, raise your hands. Okay. Let me bring one thing up, and you can say whether this is true or not. Design is an iterative process, yes or no?
Yes.
Why is it an iterative process? Raise your hand, somebody. Why?
Because it can always get better.
Because it always can get better. What's another answer? Anybody? Why is design an iterative process? Why do we have to make multiples of the product design or an object or a website before a client or the end user or the market approves the product? Why? Because why?
It's feedback loop. You're responding to feedback that you get during the design process.
Right. So basically, is what I'm hearing is we're trying to throw a dart at a wall with a target about this small in the technology and the market sector, right? So we're trying to hit a mark that's really, you know, in our opinion, intangible. But I can tell you this for a fact that it's not. As long as we do the research and we understand that we can go out and do the research properly to get enough information so we can reduce that amount of iterative process so we don't have to be throwing darts randomly trying to hit a target out there. As a designer, I think it's key that we start doing our research properly before we start designing. And that's how we protect our products. So.
You know, I work in the sales side of things and in the create business. You know, that business development piece and the business strategy. That's where we live. Products for Profits fills the gap between going from small sales and early prototype into like large volume, running it through production, etc. So there's a couple ways that good design impacts you. And I actually brought a illustration, a sample of that. Would anybody want to see it? I can show you literally, statistically, how it helps. Cool?
Yep.
Okay. So, yay, we like demos. Okay. So here's the before and after. All right. How much do you pay for this product as a consumer? $1. Okay, $1. No retailer wanted to put this in for more than $12.95. Okay, this is a client of ours. This is their before. All right. How much do you pay for this product? $19.95 all day long. This is the packaging and the branding and the design that is selling out on QVC. What? I don't know if they included shipping, but this is the design, the brand, the format of the package, the merchandising strategy that literally made their profit margin go crazy good, right? The difference in the size of the package is very minimal overall. What does this do? A good design and a good package creates trust. It creates clarity, it creates understanding, and it creates speed in your sales, right? Because it's easier for people to understand that this product is for them, all right? So this is what good design does. This, they could only sell in one store at $12.95. This is what design that needs some help does for your business, okay? It'll get you into the market, it'll get you in action. And if this is where you can start, right? But like Chuck is talking about, is iterative. Another way that good design helps is this one. So this is a product that came to us that you can't really even see from there, right? It's a Handguard for power tools. It's awesome. It prevents $20,000 accidents for $20. Cool, right? It is a Handguard that goes on power tools like reciprocating saws and keeps you from chopping your fingers off. Everybody who wants to keep their fingers if they're using power tools, raise your hand. I think it's a good idea. This is its new package, right? So a good design actually is protecting the company because we have legal warnings. We've added some graphics that help the product become visible in the package. We've actually created a package where the product use is being demoed. So a good design helps you move through all those areas so you can sell it faster, easier, better, and have less returns. Okay? So, what is our next question? Are we off to a good start here? Okay. Shawna, back over to you.
I have many questions. I think this is going to go back to Kristin, actually. You just touched on this. But if you could perhaps elaborate for everyone a little bit more, especially I think for people who are just bringing a product to fruition, who are in that process, if there are particular things that, as an investor, when you're considering valuation, that go into that. Is it user experience? Is it brand? Is it an element of the tech? Like what part of great design really becomes critical when you're trying to pitch for investment?
Wow, that's a great question, and it's actually a difficult question because the whole evaluation process, and this will come to no surprise to anyone who's pitched, it's really nebulous. So I hate to tell you, but so when you go to any angel investor, and we could be talking about different things. Maybe you have an internet company and there's no physical product. Or maybe you do actually have a physical product. But again, it's going to be how investors are going to look at this when they're evaluating the product. The most basic question is this a product that people are willing to pay money for? So looking at our examples that were held up, when you have, a beautiful product and it's fully developed, that is going to get the interest of the investor. They're like, these people are serious, this is a real company. Investor confidence, that's one way it factors in. And then really when investors are evaluating your company, they're going to look at, how much money potentially could this product company generate, so I as an investor can get my return on my investment that I would like. A 10x valuation, that's what investors would like. Again, a good design is going to help lend to that idea when you pitch to an investor that, yes, I'm going to be able to get my money back and then some, which is the critical question for an investor. Is there anything else?
No, I think you covered it. If anyone else wants to add anything to that. I'd like to hear from Mario on one question that kind of come up.
I just have to add this one thing. So, I'm sorry. When you go to most angel investors, are going to be older. They're going to be over 65, and yay, I won't call them older. So they may not be in your demographic. Okay, good design makes it that much more important to pitch it to your investor. What those investors that are not in your demographic are going to do is they're going to take it to their kids, their wives, their friends who are in your demographic, and they're going to say, hey, would you buy this? And that's it. And so good design is absolutely critical because, again, it has to be a product that someone would buy.
I have to add to that too. Good design is critical when you're pitching. One of the best ways to offset that is to make sure that you prototype and you prototype well. One of the things I really iterate is that you only get one first impression with an angel investor, and that's it. You have about 3 seconds, and that's about it, and you're out because they're going on to the next one. So make sure when you're prototyping, it works, it functions well, and it looks good. Form and function is critical when you're pitching to an investor. They're going to be looking at both, and they're going to look at the technology, and they're going to look at how is this going to be feasible in the marketplace. So it has to look like it works at least, right?
You would be surprised how many people come and try and get money with a non-functional website, or a prototype is okay, but it has to be functional, but the biggest one is a non-functioning website, and people come and try and get money. You're like, well, this doesn't work, come back later.
I have some.
Actually, I wanted to hear Mario's take on this because, Mario, you have background in the get things functioning side of life. So, yeah.
Okay. So the idea of having things that work is so important, and I cannot stress enough testing, because you can have something that you build in the lab and it works for one run, and it breaks. You're never going to be able to sell it to anybody, especially not investors. It needs to be something that you test and you test and you test more. so that it's rock solid. Looking good sometimes could get in the way of functionality, so there is a little bit of a struggle there. We have this one. I'm doing the advertisement. So this one is called, used to be called Mint. It's a product that we did at Evolution Robotics. It's a company from Pasadena that was acquired by iRobot. And it didn't look like this. It didn't used to look like this. It used to look like a prototype and very ugly. But our demographics and our designers drove us to this type of design. And if you see it from the side, it has a slanted top. A slanted top is hell for engineers. We hated it all the time because it will get caught in overhanging cabinets. But we were able to sell it, people like it, especially people in our demographic. So that's very important to have it.
What we see is a lot of times we're doing so design, maybe your trademarks. People get very invested in the names of things, and they go ahead, they move forward, they spend an inordinate amount of time picking the perfect name, and they don't clear it to make sure they have this right to use. Well, if you find out early on that you have a problem, it's so much easier to change that up early, avoid all your problems, and you can just move that company forward and focus on sales, revenue, growing the company, getting money. So.
I have to also agree with Mario too. You have to, once you're designing, you should start thinking about testing immediately. It's not, I'm just trying to, number one, protect your investment, but at the same time, you have to also check your ego out the door. At this point, you cannot rely on yourself to make, like, a decision on the viability of a product in the marketplace. You should start thinking about your ethnographic research early on and define your use cases now. I know one product recently I was just working on, we had two different use cases, only because the nature of the product was data driven. Now, which kind of data and who are the end users are going to be looking at the data, we've defined that, but we have to create two different user experiences. One for the general demographic, users out there, the consumers, and the other one for the more analytically minded, like scientists and researchers and things like that. So now we've defined two use cases. Now we have to iteratively create two different processes in the end product. So now we're looking at okay, we have one product that has two user definitions, but we still have to test on both. And we can't get out of this by just testing on one. So you have to look at your product and see where are we going to be testing this. And the more data, the better, in my opinion.
Okay, I'm going to go really nuts and bolts. All right. So if you already have a product and it's already in the market and you see that you're getting a lot of returns or a lot of customer service phone calls, you have a problem, fix it. You waited too long at that point, okay? We have a client, we were called in 7 weeks before a buyer was going to kick them out of an account that they were doing $1 million a year in, okay? $1 million in revenue was going to move to zero, and we had 7 weeks to turn the problem around. The problem at its core was related to design directly, okay? And this is a Lowe's home improvement vendor was our client at this. So we got introduced to them, and when $1 million account is telling you that they're unhappy, they were getting twice the amount of returns that they could do, they were getting twice the customer service phone calls that they should be getting, and the product was flatlining and the profit margin was tanking, right? So that's like warning bells, emergency room signals, like get the triage kit going because it's not going to be pretty, right? So if you're in that, you have to do it like tonight, right? We were able to turn it around, and it was actually a design solution that did it. First off, We had to change the color of the product because that had gotten dated. We had to change the shape of the front of the product because that had gotten dated. We need to give a whole new refresh to the buyer's perception and conversation around this product, right? So we had to do some pretty dramatic shifts. So if you are in a situation where your sales are bumping and they're flatlining and you're showing the product and people aren't buying, then something is off. Probably in the messaging, probably in your packet. You got to play detective there. So we also had to redo an instruction sheet because the instruction sheet was like literally painful. I'll confess, to this day, I have not been able to make myself read that first instruction sheet. It was like
Nobody reads the instructions.
I couldn't, right? So in terms of user experience on install, we had to revamp the user experience when they even opened the box of this product to make it that they could do it. So how do you know when to change is a great question. If you are not getting momentum, there's a problem. The A/B testing, huge. Has anybody heard of Thing Charger? It's a charging outlet that plugs into the wall. We did an Indiegogo campaign. Okay, well, when they did their first original ads, they split tested 200 different Facebook ads, 200 pieces of copy to figure out what worked. They thought their demographic was going to be women between the ages of 32 and 45. Do you want to know when they ran the analytics on who actually donated their campaign? You want to know who it was? Anybody? Men, 50 years and over. I mean, they were so dramatically off, and the only reason they found it was the split testing of it and testing the messaging. So change and don't get attached to the name. Huge. We have a client that came to us. They didn't even realize that when you said the name of the product really quickly, it said distraction. And they were like, oh my gosh, we never saw it. So have other people look at it and say it differently for you, because it'll come up.
One thing to add to that. So testing isn't, as she had mentioned, messaging. Testing isn't just for products. You can do testing on your digital assets. On the website, you do A/B testing. You put code in and send half your traffic to one page versus the other page, figure out what works. One thing that kills me is typically the head of a company, CEO, or president who looks at design and says, well, that's the one I like. Well, he picks it because that's the one he likes, but there's no testing. Chuck and I were involved with rebranding a personality that has a show on PBS. And the same situation, we gave her a new logo, and she was so hesitant about it, she didn't know which way to go. And I said, well, why don't you put it out to your users and figure out which one that they like. It's simple. And I don't know if she actually did that, but she picked the one that we suggested to begin with, which is good, and it works out for her. But you could still test your identity and your branding assets the same way as you do with a product.
I love that advice repeatedly of not being attached and not being afraid to pivot and change. It's frankly, I think no matter what industry all of us are in here, it is evolve or perish, truly. And you have to be prepared to do that at all times. So on that note, I think if you realize your product has a problem, you know that you need to revamp your design. Outside of some of the things we've discussed, A/B testing, consumer feedback, product testing, is there anything else that you guys suggest or things people can do to start that process and how to get down that road of redeveloping your design?
Well, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. Whoever's making the decision needs to take a step back and say, I don't get it anymore. And let people who understand the market, who understand the product, or understand the design process, take it over and suggest what should be done. We've been in situations where the president says this is the way it is, and he's making the only decision when he needs.
Big innovation, that is something, and that's protectable by intellectual property, that is something that investors are absolutely going to be looking at. So, big innovation, that's really what we want to see.
So I work in technology, so I could not agree more that innovation is the right thing to do. It's what I try to do all the time. And also I jump on the bandwagon of the IoT. 5 years ago, when I joined iRobot, the robots were not connected. The apps were just starting. Nowadays, this robot that is there, it has a Wi-Fi, it creates a map of your home. When it cleans up, it sends you push notification, you can see the map, and so on and so forth. So creating, innovating in the user experience, and how you, going back to design, how you design an engaging way in which consumers can use your product is actually very exciting, and it's part of the innovation.
Can I add one thing about that, real quick?
One thing that, if you're doing Internet of Things, a lot of the value of your business is going to actually be in the data, right? The data that you collect and what you can do with that. It's not just the actual use of the individual consumer, but the data. There's one product we were looking at right now, and it will become the largest infant sleep study in existence ever.
I think a theme for the future in terms of design is going to be results. You know, we all do design for a reason, and unfortunately, the reason is sales. The reason is growing the company. I think about 5 years ago, Stanford set up their design portion of their business school, and they labeled the design process design thinking, and all of a sudden it became important. Apple helped out with that a lot. So now, when I've been in this business for a long time, and I've always been in front of people, and they always ask, well, what can it do for me? What can you do for me? But because of design thinking in Apple, I think we're past the point of what can it do for me. It's going to come down to results and your process and how you're going to help your client or your product or your company get to the next level. So I think the future is going to be the details, the results.
I'll echo some of these sentiments. I straddle the universe of design and business and creatives and back to business, and I always go back to my foundation as a marketing person, first and foremost, for one simple reason: your numbers don't lie. I go through this for myself, I go through it with my clients all the time, through our own projects, their projects, demographic data, metrics. Those components are black and white. So it's great to have feelings, it's great to have an emotional connection, a creative connection to what you're doing, but ultimately to really lean into those numbers and make sure that you're doing enough to obtain that data. Amy mentioned, content, taking advantage of the internet. Before you even talk about completely redesigning a product, completely redesigning a brand, there are so many opportunities you have to soft test that in your market. So a very simple example was just one of our clients who publishes a magazine, and it's a health-based magazine, and they publish this, it's a very masculine publication. And I've always felt that way when I read it, like, this is clearly kind of dude bro-centric. But I like the content, so I'm into it. When we started to work with them and dug into their data, more than 76% of their base is female. And less than 1% of that base was engaging with their content online. No kidding, doesn't speak to them. So we started doing some things that featured more women, and the people at the top of the food chain there, their founder and editor-in-chief in particular, was like, hard no, take it down now, I hate it. Those posts saw 200% engagement compared to their typical less than 1% engagement. Wow. So at some point, you gotta really look at it and say, what am I attached to, and what works? What is the consumer telling me that my product is? Because what I think my product is may not, in fact, be my product. So I think on that note, we can probably open the floor to some questions. Sure. Do you have any questions out there? Any questions? Okay, great. You wanna come up? Yeah, just so I don't have to walk to you because I'm recovering. I've just got out of a cast.
So I'm a user experience designer, and I came to here to hear some tips, kind of like what Chuck started to talk about. Now what you've hit on is the designers need to be able to defend and to put together, come across, get our theories across, and get CEOs on board with our vision. And so what I was hoping to hear a little bit more of here is just solutions to accomplishing that, you know. So, I mean, obviously there's a solution there when you mentioned a 2%, a 200% increase. So you probably did that with, I don't know, you got them to approve the test or whatever, right? And so, like, you did it. So I was just hoping to see maybe if there's some suggestions here about techniques you've seen that designers have used in order to sell, you know, to the upper echelons of the company.
Well, I do that on a regular basis. You know, it's kind of it's about setting expectations. You know, just like when you said, sometimes you have the business owners who are expecting too much. You kind of have to bring that down. Sometimes you see opportunities where you could kind of say, well, we could do this, but you kind of have to hold yourself back without so you don't overpromise. I think my tip would be, you know, I'm on the business side of design, and Chuck is on the creation part of design, and we're in a project. Chuck could, you know, to attest to this. I've always told clients, well, I don't know if Chuck's going to like that. Because I defend Chuck. I defend his creativity, I defend his ideas, and I believe in what he does enough to sell it to the client. And that's most important. And the reason why I say that is because you have to defend your work. You have to have the reasons why and the answers to those. Because if something goes wrong, you need to know what you did before that so you can make an adjustment. If you just put something on paper and slap it together and put it out there without having reasons why you did it and where you put things and why you did the iteration, then you have no idea why it didn't work. So it's like having a 100-question test and you answer 90 of them before you put it out in the market. So now you just have to figure out what the other 10 questions are. You just slap it together and put it out there, you have to figure out the 100 questions. So it comes down to defending your work and understanding why you do the things you do so you can make adjustments.
I think coming from an engineering mindset, designers need to be able to communicate what is the intent with a particular design. What are they trying to achieve, how they appeal to whoever is the end user, and convince us. So we have our strong views, and some of us are high up or lower in the food chain, but we are intelligent and practical. So it cannot be, so many times we have the argument, oh, this looks better. Okay, why? There needs to be a way to convey why it looks better, why there is a message in the design, why the user interface works better if you do it this way or this other way. What is the message you're trying to convey?
I just want to add that. I want to second that. Again, when I work with Chuck, he always tells me why we do things. So when I work with clients, I tell them why we do things, and I defend it, which is why it works. He tells me why, and I ask him why.
So there's a couple things. When you're defending a design, I think that part of the purpose of this panel, from my perspective, was to help cross the bridge between the gap of people who speak the finance side or the business side and people who speak the design side. And I literally am an art school grad who runs business, right? So I'm squarely in that. I think that there's language you can use that respects your art aesthetic and your design aesthetic that makes a very good business case. But you have to actually be willing to start crossing that bridge, right? As a designer, you have to actually be willing to say phrases like, a really square shape is going to look dated given the direction that these other visuals are moving. I think it's going to go this direction in the next 2 years. And stand in it, you know? Because no CEO who has tooling costs or design iterations or it's going to take 6 months to put something on the market wants to look dated by the time they got there, right? Because that's not going to make any investor happy. And if you are looking at how do you defend it, you have to actually start speaking the language the other side can hear. I see it all the time where somebody goes, well, the sans serif font is going to look better. I don't give a rip about what looks better from the business side. I care about, you know what, that font will be easier for somebody to read, they'll be able to read it faster and implement the information. It gets you to the same result of having the font you want, right? But you put it in a business reason. So that's a big distinction. Like, how do you flip it on its head and speak it as a solution to a problem the other side has? The other side being the CEO, because you have the same goal, right? So that's a very tangible tip. Like, think the way the other side needs to hear it.
I'm just going to share a little story about, I was working with a client this summer, and it was in a consumer products, it was beauty products, and she was trying to come up with a name. And I gave her probably 20 no's before we got a yes, because she had great and fabulous ideas, and the name of the product, it really drives all the marketing, it drives the design in this particular industry, and I had to give her probably 20 no's. And she was very receptive. She said, okay, until we came up with a name that would jump the hurdles that she needed to go through, so she didn't later get into trouble. And it was so important that this client listened, and she got her advice early before she put her product on the market, and then got a nasty ground, and she infringed someone else's trademark.
20%.
I did. I gave her 20 no's.
A design is an iterative process. Anyway, I can just tell you from a design perspective that, like, sometimes, you know, we can be really unsure of ourselves about what we do, you know, and how we produce things. And the process of design, it's just like, the process is great for me. I love doing what I do. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it every day, day in and day out. But it gets repetitive after a while, especially if you don't do your research. So my investment is that, like, if like with Augustine, you know, working with him, he knows that, like, when I make a decision, a design decision, I back it up with research. I back it up with information. I back it up with things my clients said to me that was a need in the marketplace, as well as what my engineers say that is viable, you know, for the technology that we're releasing. So take those into consideration and do your due diligence and do your research well. So as long as you can do those things, you'll be able to back up your findings and make them listen. You know, if you're not doing that, then you're not doing your job as a designer. There's just too much bad design out there. There's so much bad design out there. It's our job to fix it, so we can make it a lot better, in my opinion. So.
Are there other questions? Jeff, can you play mic runner? Somewhere back there was questions.
Hi, my name is Anna Shen. I'm a journalist, and I came from Silicon Valley.
Welcome.
Thank you. I just had a quick question. In one of the points they were making earlier, was it was you have a year of a window for certain legal things, and then you think you're covered, and then you tweak something and you're not. Can you give a little bit more background on that?
Yeah, that was actually a complicated multi-part question. So in patents, there's something called a statutory bar. If you put something on the market, in the U.S., after you sell or offer for sale or make it public, then that starts a time bar, and you only have a year to get patent protection. That is not true with trademark, so we don't want to confuse those. But yeah, you have to, if you give up your protection, if you don't file, you lose. And so you need to, that's why you need to consult with an attorney early. The other thing is foreign patent protection. If you're looking at foreign patent protection, you in all likelihood want to preserve your rights before there's any public use or public sale.
I'm clearly not the attorney here, but I spend a lot of money with ours. I would just also say not to and you'll speak to, I'm going to bring this up and you can speak to it. Being prepared to defend your trademark and actually use it or lose it. Because something I didn't know early on, it was like, oh great, we finally trademarked something ahead of a launch. We're ahead of the game, we're in such great shape. And we had enough usage to justify that. But now we had a big lag before the next big roll, and oh my gosh, someone else is using it, but now we have no real defense because we haven't been doing anything. And that is a real issue to consider timeline-wise.
Yeah, that is exactly true. When you're talking about trademarks, there are different ways to file. You can actually be using in commerce, or you can have an intent to use, where you file, you want to see if you can secure the rights before you actually launch. That's an intent to use. And what happens is you go through the process, you get it allowed, and then you have to file a statement of use. And if you're not using it, you have to go on extensions, and they're limited. So what can happen is you can basically have that expire and then have to refile. I think what you were talking about is you have secured the trademark, and then you have to periodically file these statements of use showing you're still using it in commerce. And you have to do those, and you have to be using it, and you have to show use in commerce. So you can't stop using it and maintain your rights. And the other thing is you also have to police your mark. So you have to look in the market and see if anyone else is using your mark. And that's something you can talk to an attorney about. And if you know someone is using it, you basically can't just ignore it and, hope they go away. It doesn't work that way.
I know, that was a really great lesson for me too. You can probably hear me, so I will not take the mic back.
I will. We had a situation exactly you're describing where we went, oh, okay, someone is using our trademark, and my attitude was, it's really not that big of a deal. I don't want to be that guy sending the cease and desist, since they're really not going to they're not competition. They'd like to be. I'm going to let it roll. And our attorney was like, oh no. You have to defend it. If you don't, you hit a certain point where you have a new problem. You must defend the mark. So I think that's also really good free legal advice to take here today too, because it's something a lot of us miss.
There's another example of that. So if anybody knows the software Infusionsoft, they actually, for many years, didn't really stop people from using it as part of their name, right? So a consultant could start maybe, like Infusionsoft 101 would be their consultancy or something. And so a lot of people went and they established businesses under those kind of names, and then Infusionsoft got legal advice that they really had to stop everybody who was doing that. And so unfortunately they had to go and send a lot of notices to people, and all of those businesses that had brand equity under those names had to do name changes. And it was done with goodwill and collaboration, but that's expensive, and so you want to actually just do it up front if you can. Just don't go there. So with that, I think that we should probably wrap up and give everybody some time to get to know each other. And I just wanted to thank the panel again. Will you all be sticking around for at least a few minutes? I know, Chuck, you're headed over to City Hall really soon. But is that okay with everybody if we get up, have some beverages, move around? There's more snacks we'll be putting out. Oh, Augustine. Oh, we also have to mention which groups it's from. Like, who is here?
Oh, DesignX, Innovate Pasadena, DesignX.
So we have DesignX. This has been a collaboration between DesignX, which is a meetup. So you can find their information on meetup.com. You can also talk to Chuck and to Augustine about that. It's user experience, design focused. They do great content. Pasadena Startup Entrepreneurs is a group that Jeff and I run with collaborator Colin. So we do a monthly meeting as well. We also have the Product Mastery group on meetup.com, which is all for product businesses of all shapes and sizes. So is there anything anybody wants to add real quick?
One last question. For the designers out there and those who are hiring designers, I think in the future designers and if not already are going to be the new rock stars in the business. Just look at Apple and their head designer, very well known, highly paid. But unfortunately, with that comes responsibility of delivering and making sure that what you design is relevant and important. Just exactly. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, everyone. Please come up and check out the Roomba and the iRobot products we have up here. Feel free to stay in the space. The festival starts at 6 o'clock over at City Hall, which is a block and a half from here. So there is the promo code. I think it may still be working. It's Collaborator if you want a ticket for that, okay? So thank you so much, and thank you, everyone.
Awesome.